Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Conversations on Conversations, the show where each week we explore a topic to help us have more powerful conversations with ourselves and with others. I'm your host, Sarah Noel Wilson. And this week, we are continuing our conversation from last week with Tara Jaye Frank, author and thought leader and an amazing leader who wrote the book, The Waymakers, which is powerful and impactful. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, I encourage you to do that now. And now we continue our conversation with Tara Jaye Frank.
I know you wanted to talk about the fence sitters. I don't know if you want me to
that's where I want to
say
go.
anything about that.
Yeah,
Okay,
no, I
go
do,
ahead.
because it literally just came up today in a conversation where somebody recognized that their organization had some very real opportunities, and this individual is incredibly passionate. And this is something, well, there's two different things. So let me make a note. I'm going to come back to this one in a second.
Okay.
Because I'll forget her and I don't want to. But they said, the leadership isn't ready, which is huge. That's where I want to go. That's another door I want to open up later. But but she's like, there's like a dozen of us that are really passionate about it. But then she goes, but I'm the only one who's courageous enough to say something. And it immediately took me back to your 20-60-20 rule, or like that framework of, we're not going to make the changes by moving the people who are really resistant. And this actually makes me think of the conversation we had previously with Dr. Nika White. And she said, I'm not interested in the people who are saying, hey, I don't see color and I don't do this. I'm interested in the quiet people in the back who are paying attention, but they're not speaking up. And she said, so I want to go after those quiet people. So talk to us about the, and if people, as you're hearing this, realize, oh, maybe I'm a fence sitter, I invite you not to shame yourself, but to go, how do you get off of it? Because I think of it as, I'll finish this thought and then I want to hear from you, is a number of years ago when I was overseeing the leadership development efforts, we were doing this massive cultural clarification reshift. And so many people were what I would describe the fence sitter as wait and see. Right?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
It's like, yes, totally same thing. I like your language better because it's a stronger visual. And, like, I don't know, Sarah, we've done this before and I'm just not sure. I'm just going to kind of wait and see. And my question is always, well, what role do you want to play in making it successful this time? Right. So talk to us about fence sitters. What do they look like? And why is it so detrimental to progress? Because that's one of the, I'll stop talking.
Yeah. So I'm going to share a little bit of a story, and I talk about this in the book. So if you've read the book, you've read it. And if not, hopefully you will get the book so you can kind of read it more fully. But when I was first bringing executive teams together to talk about race and racism, I was asking all of them to read Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail in its entirety. And then we would get on the Zoom, and I would simply just ask them, okay, tell me your name, where you grew up, and a reflection from the letter. And they would share different reflections, but every single time, more than one person would say, the part that really struck me is where he talked about the white moderate. He says in the letter that he's more disappointed with the white moderate than he is the Ku Klux Klanner, right? Or the white citizens councilman. And what he's saying is that with the Ku Klux Klan and the White Citizens Council, he knows where they stand. He understands that they hate him and people like him, and they do not want him to have equal rights. But the people who claim they do, for them to essentially be benign in this particular journey was the more disappointing realization for him. And so what executives were saying to me is, I read the part about the white moderate and I was thinking to myself, that's me. That's me in this situation, in this moment in history. I don't consider myself racist. I don't hate Black people. I don't feel like I'm doing anything to harm anyone. but I'm not necessarily doing anything to help the situation either. And I think it's
Mm.
because I don't know what to do or I don't want to get it wrong. Right. So all that was kind of happening. So when they would ask me, well, why are we stuck? Like the other thing they said about the letter is the thing that really freaks me out is it feels like it could have been written today. You know, it was all these years ago, but they're like, it feels like it could have been written today. Why are we stuck? And I'd say, it's the fence sitters.
Mm.
Anytime we go through any major change, you have 20% of the people, right? Like we talked about on the front end, let's go, let's change. 20% of the people, it's increasing a little bit. I'd probably say we're
Mm.
more like 25% of the people on the other end. Like, I like it this way. Don't touch my stuff. And then you have the rest of the people in the middle, sitting on the fence, waiting and seeing, observing, maybe feeling badly about what they see, wishing it were not happening, but not seeing themselves as playing an active role in changing it.
Mm.
The Waymakers was written for those people, Sarah. The Waymakers was written for those people. It is my invitation to all the people who don't like that inequity is a thing, who believe that we should be more equitable, who believe in the idea of inclusion, but are not playing an active role in facilitating it. And I know because I've been with them, I've spent time with thousands of them, I know that oftentimes those people are sitting on that fence because they do not know what to do once they get off,
Mm.
and they feel insecure about doing it. So when those people get off the fence and into the equity arena, when those people are equipped to lead differently, when those people realize that they are not alone, they are part of at least 40%,
Mhm.
if not a little bit more, when they realize they're not alone and they get the courage to lead forward in a bolder, braver way, we will tip the scales.
Yeah.
Until then, it's the 20% fighting against the 25% and a
Mm.
whole bunch of benign nothing happening.
It's
Or sympathy.
or sympathy, right?
Benign
Or
or sympathy.
yeah, and and then there's shades within it too, from the
There are.
standpoint
There
of
are
right.
lots of
Then you've got the
shades. Yeah.
performative, and you've got the
Yes, lots of shades.
It's boy, I had a thought and I lost her. Let me see if I can grab her back for a second.
I love that you're calling your thoughts her.
I do. I talk to my brain all the time. She, she has a mind of her own sometimes. I don't know if this is healthy, but it works for
Right.
me. But
Clearly it works.
yeah.
Clearly.
There's a practice that we're really passionate about. We call it it's from the work of immunity to change. And we
Mhm.
call and so something that's coming up for me is, having a courageous audit of what am I doing or not doing that's
Yeah.
getting in the way of me wanting to show up in this way. And, and I know from my experience, right? I'm so fortunate to have really really great friends who aren't afraid to push me hard on stuff and also being clear about my intentions of why I'm doing it.
Right, exactly.
My friend asked me very pointedly, are you doing this because you want to be seen as a good white person, or are you doing it because you want to make change? And it was like, oh shit. That's a and in the moment
Both?
both. Yeah. And I was like, I think in this moment it's not, because I know there were moments when it was the former, and and there are times, and probably it's always the both, but that
I mean, but kudos to the humanity, honestly, because the honest answer is sometimes it's both, but I didn't realize that.
I didn't realize it until you named it, and then I was
That's
like,
exactly right.
Like, oh boy, okay. It was like, oh, there were definitely times, and I think if I may talk to my loving fence sitters for a moment,
please.
Whatever
I do love them, by the way, because we need them. I mean, that's why I wrote the book for them, because we need them.
Oh, you're that. Yes, that came through for me anyway. That came through really loud and clear. And also it makes me think of Michelle Kim's book, The Wake Up, of right. Like, this isn't. We shouldn't be dismantling this it will serve all of us, right? When we can take care of
Yes.
the people who have been most marginalized, it will
That's
benefit
right.
everyone. When we can strip down the masks of the rules, if you will, of white supremacist culture, it actually serves all of us, and patriarchy,
Mhm.
and to like be our true authentic selves. But so a couple of thoughts. One,
Mhm.
I have to remind myself that whatever discomfort I'm feeling, it pales in comparison to the pain and the cost that being a Black woman in America, that it's
Yeah.
like this discomfort of being called out, or this discomfort of doing it wrong. I remember, I got the thought. Um that idea that silence is a message. You talk about it in your book. It's something that Dr.
Mhm.
Nika White and I talked about. It's something that's come up in other conversations, is that inaction is action, right? Inaction
Mhm.
is sending a message. And are you okay with that? Like
Right.
really asking, like, are you okay observing and not playing an active role? Um, because I think
Yeah.
it can be easy to feel like, oh, because I feel bad, that like somehow I'm doing something, and that's not the same.
No, it's not the same at all. And the other thing that I hope comes through in the book, and it comes through in my work anyway, is when I say I believe in the creative potential of everyone, that includes the fence sitters.
Mm,
Like, what I want to say to people who have been on the fence is I believe, and I want you to also believe in your capacity
mm,
to lead differently, in your capacity to expand your idea, right, of what is possible, to broaden your skill set, right, when it comes to leading, to be more empathetic, to be more courageous, to make an impact in places you never thought you could. I believe in the creative potential of everyone, the people who have been left behind and those who have inadvertently left them behind.
mm.
And if I didn't, I couldn't do the work I do, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah, that was a section where somebody asked you, I don't remember the exact question, but like
Yes, ask me
what
if I
gives you
thought what
hope?
I was doing makes a difference.
Mhm. Mhm.
In so many words, he asked me, "Do I
Yeah.
think it makes a difference?" Yeah.
Yeah. Let's I w- okay. One of the framework, I don't know if frameworks is the right word, but just descriptors that you
Hmm.
talk about, is what does talent need? And there's
Yeah.
4 that you listed off, and you mentioned them earlier, and uh there was one that just I'd never heard it said in the way that you said it, because we often will say people want to be seen, heard, and know that they add value, but
Yeah.
yours are to be seen, to be respected, to be valued. And the one that like it almost like caught my breath a little bit, and made me misty, was and to be protected.
Hmm.
And and I think, for me, that idea of sometimes in the workplace we get so technical in our language, we forget that we're dealing with humans
Right.
who are complex, who are coming, who've experienced hurt, who might still be experiencing, hurt in the workplace, that we forget that you have a living person in your realm, in your world.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
idea of being protected, that was something that, when we talk about psychological safety and all of that, but there
Yeah.
was something about that language that just landed differently. I've never heard it said in that way. And so I would love to hear you break that down. And then, you quickly talked about it before, but what does it look like when it's not? And one
Hmm.
thing I will say to people who are listening that I especially appreciated about, I don't remember if it was in this chapter or the other chapter, but no, it was when you were breaking down the research you did, it wasn't lumped
Hmm.
together. You were breaking it down by different groups
Yeah.
and painting that more detailed picture of the human experience that I really appreciate it. So let's talk about, what does it mean to be seen? What does it mean to be respected, to be valued, and to be protected?
Yes. Thank you for asking me this question, because honestly, the research is, I think, one of the most powerful parts of the book. And the reason why is because I do get really specific about
Mhm.
how different people define being seen.
Yeah.
or invisible, how different people define being respected or disrespected, and the impact that those emotional states have on their relationship with the company. So I find it to be one of the most instructive chapters in the book because it is the most human
Mm.
chapter in the book. So when I say people want to be seen, I mean they want to be represented, in the company, in leadership, in rooms where decisions are being made. They also want to be credited for the work they do, right? When they're not credited for the work they do, it makes them feel invisible.
Mm.
They want to be noticed. We're in this room. Oh, hey, Sarah, you're here. I'm glad you're here, right? So
Mhm.
they want to be represented, credited, and noticed.
Mm.
When I say they want to be respected, I mean for their, not only for their personhood, because sometimes I talk about this in the book. Sometimes we talk about inclusion and we talk about belonging, and then we end up talking about, making people feel welcome. And I know why we get there, but we oversimplify. Like, people
Mm.
don't go to work just to be welcomed. It's nice that we welcome people. That is a kind thing to do, but that does not make people feel they belong.
Mm.
Welcoming them is not the same as belonging. So, what people really want is to be respected for who they are and how they are. That includes what they know, what they've done before, what they think, what they decide, right? So when you respect me, you respect not only my personhood, but you respect my expertise, my decisions, my ideas, my experiences. When I say people want to be valued, yes, with pay and promotion, but also appreciation. The research showed so clearly that people feel devalued when they work their behinds off and don't get appreciated for it. Like, yes, bonuses are great. I'd like that. Yes, a raise. Yes, please. Promotion, all that. But sometimes it was as simple as I feel overworked and undervalued because no one was showing them appreciation
Yeah.
for going above and beyond. And then
And
when I say people, oh, go ahead.
no, what I was going to say is, and one of the things you speak to, and we know through research and stories and experiences, and we know that largely, if you are a person of color working in a white dominant culture,
Hmm.
you have to you have to work harder, right? Like, or
Yeah.
there's a sense of you have to
Yeah.
do even more work to
There's a burden of proof
there's a burden of
associated with
proof, right?
that.
That's
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
talk quite a bit, right, about the burden of proof in an earlier chapter. But yes, there's a burden of proof. You have to provide additional evidence of your competence, right, at almost every turn.
Mhm.
So, and then to be protected is, it's psychological safety, yes, but what it looks like in real time is to be buffered, like
Mm.
people to provide air cover for you, when you're doing something new or when you make a mistake. It looks like being defended in real time. So
Mm.
if we're in a meeting and somebody says something racially insensitive or offensive and nobody comes to my defense, I feel unprotected in that moment. So protection is certainly, I feel protected as a Black person in this space, as a Black woman in this space. I know that I am physically and emotionally safe here. But the psychological part of it is, can I bring my, unique perspective to this conversation? Can I talk about my experiences relative to this decision we have to make? Um, can I push back on the status quo here? Because I see this differently because I
Mm.
come from a different perspective.
Mm.
Do I feel safe to push back on the status quo or challenge this norm or identify a risk that I have
Mm.
visibility to? Or am I going to get blamed for it? So these are the kinds of things. This is how it shows up. People who feel protected, they raise red flags when the red flags should be raised. They bring up the big ideas when the big ideas might get you off the dime, right? They challenge norms so that you can have a better, more creatively tense conversation that might get you to a better business outcome. That's what protected people do.
Mm.
Unprotected people sit back, they weigh the risk benefit ratio of almost everything they say and how they say it, which means ultimately they're not contributing fully the business is not getting maximum benefit, and they won't be perceived as leader like because they're not taking risks.
Right.
So that's the thing that leaders have to cultivate. It's not enough to say, I have not destroyed your protection or your
Mm.
psychological safety. You actually have to cultivate that on purpose. And of course, in the book, I talk about how.
Yeah. And you, if I'm remembering correctly, so I'm not going to get all the details, but I'll get the
It's okay.
essence. Maybe like a month or two ago, you did a video on LinkedIn where you talked
Hmm.
about how often or not how common it is to give a team member of color an assignment that's a stretch
Hmm.
assignment without the
Yeah.
am I remembering this?
Without the scaffolding.
Without the scaffolding, without the
Hmm.
support, without the
Yep.
and so that was something that was coming up as you were talking about that protection of,
Yeah.
am I alone on the branch by myself, or do I
That's
have
right.
the support to take that risk? Because the other point that you make as, just a really important reminder is that, and when there's a failure on the part of, say, if I were to fail, it doesn't get applied to all, like,
All white women.
it might get applied to women, but
It
it's
could
certainly
be.
not going to be all white women, right? Like, but
Hmm.
if you do something, it's more likely to be applied to. See, that's why we shouldn't put black women in
Yeah,
power.
because there are so few data points. So what's
Right.
happening in our brain is we're trying to understand someone or a group of someone's according to the data that we have available to us. So if I know 50 white men, I know they're all unique and
Mm,
distinctive and they have
mm,
nuances and quirks and all this. So if Jim does something, I know because I know 50 white men
mm,
that that's just
mm,
Jim. Because I already know that John is not like that and, Richard is not like that and so, because I know them. If I know one black person
mm.
and that's the only data point I have, if they do something, I don't have anything else to counter that data point. So my brain wants to extrapolate it and say, well, this is what I know about black people,
Mm,
what Tara did. So in the workplace, how that happens is if I give Tara, this really big job and give her a shot to do it and she fails, now I'm like, oh, I don't know if we should put another black person in there. We know what happened the last time. But we never do that to Jim. We don't say, I don't think we should promote any more white men. Jim didn't get it right. It sounds ridiculous when I say it out loud, but it happens.
there's a couple of things that are coming up for me. One is that idea of, so often I hear and I see organizations wanting to jump to, well, we just need to hire more well, they'll say diverse, but what they really mean is racially diverse people. And it's problem. I mean, on one hand, we need representation. On the other hand, and something that you tease out is the fact that just having more employees isn't as valuable as also making sure that our leadership team is representative, that we have diversity on all different levels. And so I'm curious just to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm just going to share an example. So, as you know, I have lots of stories in the book, like real stories of things that happen with clients, things I experienced as a consultant, right, etc. Um, there was one company that had actually really good black representation in their organization. So, meaning the representation in the company mirrored
Mm,
the US census, right? Like they were represented, but they were all at entry level. They
mm,
were all really deep in the organization. No one, there were like two or three who were in leadership positions. And I did a series of listening sessions, and one of the black people actually said to me that on the floor in the manufacturing facility, he said on the floor, they call this company the plantation. That is what he said to
mm,
me.
mm,
And I will never forget it because what struck me in that moment is that when people do not see themselves at higher levels of play, when they don't know that their interests, their perspectives, their needs are being represented in important decision making conversations, in conversations about culture and policies and even products and solutions, they do not feel part, right, of the organization. They do
Mm,
not feel they can aspire to higher heights. They don't feel like they can grow. They simply feel like they are just worker bees, making the donuts, and they don't have anything to aspire to.
mm.
So it's problematic when we favor representation and we forget that that representation should be at all levels and in all places in the company.
Yeah. And you, I mean, you go on to talk about, right, the limitations of when teams are homogenous, how that
Hmm.
limits you
Yep.
and what was else was coming up for me as we were thinking about that. My brain, the
So
glitches
many
are just,
ideas, girl.
there's so many
Where's your
ideas and I just
chocolate?
can't. I can't.
You need your chocolate boost.
I will have some later, and I am gonna buy some of that Chicago
Vosges.
chocolate
Yes.
Vosges. Such a fancy
I'm giving
Vosges.
her a free commercial.
We'll tag the link for those of you who are listening. We
Right.
will tag the link
So
in the
good.
thing. Okay, so let's just real quickly for our listeners, because I think this is such an important study to understand, is the McKinsey study on women in the workplace.
Yep.
Because I mean, there's so many things that perpetuate it, right? The infinity bias, which you talk about. Again, a quick side note: I will be a commercial for your book every day of the week,
Oh.
because you explain, again, things that you're familiar with, you hear about, about, but sometimes hearing it through a different voice and connecting it. But that infinity bias of, right, we collect with, and we
The
like
affinity
people who look
bias.
and sound.
Yep. We
Yeah,
trust and surround
we tr-
ourselves with people who are like us, basically.
right. And and a quote that I've shared on previous episodes is my colleague Jomada Villanova Mitchell. She always says, "You can't be a great leader if you only know how to lead people who look and sound like you."
That's right.
And
And so many do.
uh,
So
right,
many only know that. They've only ever done that.
right, and so the McKinsey. I mean, it's so fascinating and depressing and devastating
Hmm.
when you see the percentage of people who enter the workforce and how that decreases as people move up the food chain into leadership positions. And
Yeah.
so, and in some industries, it's even more pronounced, right? I did a lot of work in the banking industry, and it's the total number of people is 60% women, and only 2% are in senior levels of
Ooh.
leadership.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask you to, if you don't know the numbers off the top of
Hmm.
your head, but the main thing that is so striking is that every group but white males decrease
Hmm.
from where they start to senior leaders. White men are the only group that actually increases
Yep.
their uh, roles
Hmm.
as they move up, and it's something substantial. Like they start at, I think it was 35 or 45%, and in leadership they operate at a 66%.
Yep.
Um, and
And women of color decrease the most.
you're right, like
Yeah. And
substantially.
the way you know this because you've read the book, but the way I talk about that in the book is kind of through that whole power core concept. So
Hmm.
in any given entity, right, the people who have the power are in the middle, and in the middle is all the good stuff. The insight
Mm,
and the access and the opportunity. And the more different you are from the people in power, the further removed you are from all that good stuff.
mm.
And we need the insight, the access, and the opportunity in order to grow and get to higher levels of play. So we sometimes make assumptions that that stuff's going to trickle down and out, and it doesn't. It does not. It does not.
And I think that sometimes well-intended my well-intended HR colleagues
Hmm.
think that, well, we're just going to create a career ladder or lattice, and we're going to talk about how to, but there's so much unspoken. I mean, in any culture, there's
Hmm.
so many unspoken rules. There's knowing who actually has the power? How do you influence them? How do you have those connections? And
And the
and that's
choices we make every day, like I talk about in Waymakers, and the behaviors we exhibit every day. So again, you can have, this is why I talk about the three levels of culture and why it's so important to
mm,
me to have
mhm.
this discussion, because the three levels, right, as I talk about in the Waymakers, is the claim, or what we say about ourselves, the policy or the rules we put in place to reinforce what we say about ourselves, and then there are the norms. So my frustration has been, as a consultant, kind of watching all this unfold, is that we've been so focused on the claims. What do we want to
Mm,
declare about ourselves as a
mm.
company? We've been super focused on the policies, as we should be. I'm not knocking it, but again, that's a systems lens. We say we're going to change this policy and that policy. And now we have flex work, and now we have partner benefits, and they're feeling all good, but they do not transform their norms. They
Yeah.
do not clearly define what it looks like and sounds like and is like to lead inclusively and equitably every single day. They don't monitor the degree to which their leaders are actually doing that. They don't hold people accountable when they discover that they're not. Like, that's where this breaks down. You have
Yeah.
policies that are all the right you're requiring on paper all the right things, but you're not translating that for people in a way that they know what to actually do tomorrow when they go to work. That's
Right.
why I wrote the Waymakers the way I did. That's why when you say it's dangerously simple, it's because I know from being in these companies that people have their claims and their policies, but leaders do not know what to do every day. They don't
It's
know how to
and
translate it.
imagine we one of our first episodes we did was with Dr. Chris Wildermuth, and we were talking about humanizing the workplace.
Hmm.
And we talk a little bit about this of just think of how many hours and how much money is spent perfecting the statement, perfecting the
Yes.
values, perfecting, I don't know, the mouse pad that you're going to print the values on or whatever. I mean, there's so much time spent on the claim and again I mean, and just literally sometimes no time spent really educating people
Hmm.
and that part holding people accountable to it.
I
I mean,
know.
we it is so common to see what we lovingly call brilliant jerks, right? And it's, you know,
Yes.
what you tolerate is what you value, right? What you accept is actually what you value. So it's like, I don't care what's on your wall.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you know, this person keeps getting
Or
this feedback
right.
or
And like,
rewarded.
the way I think about it is what you tolerate is sometimes what you value, or sometimes just what you're willing to accept for the benefit that you get. So the way I think about this, as I shared
I
with you
appreciate that
already,
reframe.
well,
Hmm.
I like to compare everything to like real life things that people can relate to, because I think it helps make it real. So like, let me give you an example. I talk about in the book how, I was married before, and then I got divorced, and then I got remarried. So there was a period of time when I had three young children, like in my house, just me trying to make it work. Well, let me tell you what, I'm a writer. So I had all the good words about how our household should run, right? I had all the good words about the rules that I had in place. But when those kids now and then would break those rules, and it was going to cost me too much time or too big of a headache, for me to actually hold them accountable in that moment, I didn't always do it. And so, do
Mm,
you think my claims for what kind of household I wanted to run and even my rules mattered at all? Nope. Because when
mm.
somebody showed up at 9:30 with a chocolate bar, and I knew that taking the chocolate bar was going to cause a fit that I was then going to have to spend 30 minutes trying to unravel, and I was tired from a full day of being an executive, so I didn't do anything. Who got a chocolate bar the next night too? So
Yeah.
this is what happens inside our workplaces. We spend all the time on the claim, we spend all the time on the policies, and we do not spend enough time on the norms. And it's a
Yeah.
missing link, because the whole middle of our organizations, they do not know what to do, or they don't believe you mean what you say you mean.
Right, right. I mean, that's such a like the gap between espoused values and actual behaviors, and then. Then to just connect it further to another point you made, because again, these are patterns that we see in organizations. Is then the norms, the behaviors is pushed down to the team members and the
Yep,
employees,
that's right.
and I can only imagine how often you see this in your work,
Hmm.
but it is more common than not that you have this very passionate, usually an HR person who we're talking to, or it comes up um, and they go, "We really need this, but I'm going to be honest, my leadership isn't,
Hmm.
on board." And but we've started these ERG groups and we have these
Hmm.
committees, and one of the practices when we're working with leaders is work avoidance. Right? Well, how are we avoiding the real work? And I'm like, committees
Yes.
without
Yes.
power, authority, and resources is one of the sexiest work avoidance and most common work avoidance that happens.
Ding.
And
Ding ding.
it's almost always
Yeah.
with diversity, equity, inclusion work. It's like that's the box we're going to check. Hey, we've got
Yep.
ERGs. We're not going to give them any budget. We're not going to give them any resources,
Yeah.
and we're not going to attend, and we're not going to have conversations.
Exactly.
And
I have a thing about ERGs. I know I talked about it in the book. I want to say for anybody listening, ERGs are very nice. I think that you should have them. They combat isolation. They do
mm,
not drive equitable outcomes.
mm,
They do not by themselves create inclusive cultures. They combat isolation.
mm, mm,
This is a totally different benefit than the benefits brought about by equitable and inclusive leadership, which unlocks opportunity, which unlocks, right, innovation, which unlocks all of those other things. So ERGs, yes, yes, so people don't feel alone. So
mm.
they have other people they can be in community with. They can share their experiences, they can get ideas, they can bring ideas forward, but they do not in and of themselves solve your equity and inclusion problem. Full stop.
Mm. It has to start with the leadership. I mean, that's one of the
Has
things
to.
that.
And just so you know, when people call me, and they sometimes do, and they say, I'm really passionate about this, but my CEO is not supportive, I say, I am not your person,
Mhm.
because it
I
doesn't
just
work.
I just said that on your behalf. I said said I don't know her as well, but here's what I know about her. I'm not actually going to recommend her
No.
because based off of what you said. And I will say, even we try really hard in our work to pick, align with right clients. But sometimes it can be easy. Well, let's see if we can get a door in. Let's see if we can open
Hmm.
up. And now it's just like, nope. I mean, even that has given me more courage to just be like, no, it's just not. How can I support you? Let's be the daisy in the onion patch, right? Like, how can we help you? But the reality is I don't want to say it's a waste of your time and money, but it's not going to move the needle.
Mm-mm. I have
If the
fired clients
same.
just because I'm like, I'm sorry that you're experiencing this, but it is clear to me based on A, B, and C that your leadership is not genuinely committed to this change at this time. And that's fine, but I'm not the one.
Mm.
I am all about impact. I used to say in the beginning, I don't drag cats out from under beds. That's the way I think about it. Like somebody's under there with their like claws in the carpet. They're you're right
Oh
on the
my
floor,
gosh.
like, come on, you can do this. They reach out, they scratch the crap out of you. That's not my idea of a good time. I don't do that. Somebody
It's
might, but it's not Tara Jaye Frank.
that is, oh my god. I got makeup in my eyes and now my eyes are
Oh
burning.
no, the burn.
It's that is the most accurate description
I just
of,
don't, I can't.
because, well, and I mean, and even when you're working with people who are willing. I mean, I
Hmm.
know this from talking with all of my friends who are in the DEI space, because I mean, I'm always saying, boy, you should make 3 times as much as anything that I'm doing because the cost is so different.
Yeah.
Right? What you're navigating and the emotional burden
Right.
and the navigating other people's it's just at a different level. Um, that even with people who are willing,
Hmm.
there is a cost to you doing this work.
There
I would
is.
imagine.
There
Yeah.
is, because it's hard. It's hard to depersonalize it, but depersonalize it you must.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of energy. Like I was doing some work with a sports organization once, and we were meeting with a board of directors for one of their regions, and there were a lot of people in this meeting, and we were talking about how to get more black and brown people, into their facilities. And he basically said to me, well, look, the people who come to our facility have said point blank they don't want black people in there. So what do you expect me to do about
Mm,
that? And those moments, I haven't
mm,
had many of them because not everybody is like that bold with it, but that's hurtful. So in the moment, you have to figure out, how you're going to respond to these grenades that sometimes people
mm.
throw, or sometimes it's not always that bold. Sometimes it's just a little bit more subtle, but still insidious. So
Yeah.
it can certainly be emotionally taxing. But, I think if I did not believe that I was purposed for this work, that I was, that I am a bridge builder and that I'm supposed to build bridges, I would not be doing it because it's hard.
Mm,
It's hard to stay in it with people, but you know what? I want everybody to know, like, I am here. I am in it with you. I think if people read the Waymakers, they will feel that, they will know that.
mm.
I shared this with you before, we will be launching on demand courses by the end of the summer. The reason I wanted to do that is the only people who can really benefit from my immersion experiences, from my education, my capacity building work, is when their company has invested in it. So for
Right.
any individual, like the people who call you and say, I'm really passionate about it, but my CEO doesn't care. Like there's
Mhm.
no way for me to serve those people outside of this book. But
Yeah.
these courses will be a way, because as an individual, they can then, experience what other people experience when their companies actually invest in it.
Yeah. It's and as we're winding down our conversation, I cannot express enough. I say this with the absolute confidence that your work is going to become a foundational brick in my work, in my world. There's there's different fields of practices that we refer to or we direct people to or we quote from. Um, and partly because you I've been on my reading journey for the last, half a dozen years or so,
Mhm.
and I think the thing that struck me about yours that made it so accessible for me, not only not just in how do I support clients or how do I
Mhm.
direct them to you or get them to your book, but also just as a person when I think about the company I'm trying to build, as I think about how we're scaling, how do we be more intentional about it, how do we think about these things, is there's so many practical things. There's so many things. Like, I don't know how someone could read this book and go, I don't know what to do anymore. Right?
That
It now
blesses
the
me.
challenge would be
Yeah.
it would be where do you start? Because
Right.
I need to go, there's so many. What's the one or two that I want to start really building into a habit that I want to
Mhm.
see? And I say this with it's already changed how I show up in conversations. There's already been moments. It's only really I've only been reading it for the last 2 weeks,
Mhm.
and there's already been moments that I've interrupted differently because I
Mm.
saw them differently because of your book and your work. And mm,
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that, because Sarah, you've written a beautiful book and you know this. You pour your whole self headlong into it, and you don't really ever know, how
mm,
it's going to land on people outside of your own brain, because you think about these things all the time, and you use these concepts all the time. And so hearing you reflect that back to me means more to me than you can possibly know.
Mm,
I'm so focused on impact. I always have been. Um, and it matters to me that it is working for you, because I want it to work for leaders so that leaders can work better for their people. That is the end
yeah.
game for me.
Yeah. I mean, instantaneously, it felt, I mean, things were, again, I'm such a firm believer that when we can see things differently,
Hmm.
right? We can't unsee it. And now we get to choose differently. And you've just laid out I wouldn't even say it's a roadmap. I mean, I just think there are some books that I know I'm always going to be going back to over and over and again, or, oh, this situation came up. Oh, I think that,
Hmm.
that it's so rich with insight and stories and heart and humanity. And I mean, I have to tell you I already knew I loved you before us bringing you
Same,
on the
same,
show,
same.
but the quote that I was like, oh, this, because I'm a curiosity girl. This is our whole foundation, is just, how do we be curious when it's hard? How do we be
Hmm.
curious? I mean, there's always things we don't know. That's
Yeah.
that's I mean, it's just my motto. There's always things I don't know about myself. There's always things I don't know about others.
Yep.
And so this quote of curiosity breeds familiarity. Familiarity makes way for trust. Trust builds relationship. Relationships open doors of opportunity. And the only way we achieve equity is together.
Hmm.
Tara, before we leave, I have to ask you the question we always
Hmm.
ask, if we can be curious for a second. It feels so jarring. I'm gonna be transparent. I just want to end on that note of just, you're amazing, but I want to honor our ritual
Yes, I
of
love
closing out our
rituals.
show.
Give it to me.
And okay, since this is a show that's about conversations on conversations, what is a conversation with yourself or with someone else that has transformed you? And you can share whatever you would like us to know.
Yeah. Well, I actually talked about this in my book lunch party recently. When I was asking for help with the Waymakers, like testimonials and all that other stuff, you need that kind of help. I was initially afraid to reach out and to ask for that, because I'm not very good at asking for help,
Mm.
which is really weird because I'm really good at giving it, but I'm not great at asking for it. And so I had a life coach who was kind of helping me. I had to um, talk to myself about the fact that people wanted to help me.
Mm,
Like, that's the conversation I had to have with myself. Tara, people want to support you. They want to help you. Not just that they will, but
mm,
that they want to. And that really did change things for me, because you know what? There's a point you can get to with just hustle and grind.
mm.
And then beyond that, you can't, without help, without somebody making a way for you. And so, as much of a waymaker as I consider myself, have always considered myself, as much as I'm trying to inspire and equip other waymakers, I had to remember and realize that I need them to still, and will continue to, and give myself the permission and gather the courage to ask for what I need.
Mm. I I love you. I love
I love you too. You are so sweet. So many people
oh.
told me how much I was going to love you. I'm like, I believe
No,
you.
that's
I'm
good.
not. You don't have to. You don't have to convince me. I believe you, and they were so right.
I I don't know when I started to follow you, but I'm getting a little misty. Um, Anytime you talk, I'll listen. I- you have had such a profound impact on me, and really in a fairly short amount of time. I mean, I think it's only been over the last year and a half or so that our paths have crossed in a more consistent way. And I say this to everyone who's listening. You need to follow Tara on LinkedIn. You need to follow her on Twitter. She puts out great content on both. And you will be better for listening and then doing better because you received her insights and wisdom. And I'm so I just don't even have the words. Okay, so we need to get the book into people's hands. So we will
Yes.
include in the show notes. Also, if you send us a message, so for those of you who are listening to this, for the first 20 people who reach out to us at podcast@sarahnoelwilson.com, just send us your name and your address. We will gift a book to the first 20 people who reach out because I really do believe in this work, and I want to get it into as many people's hands as possible. And
Thank you
so,
so much
yes.
for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So again,
Appreciate it.
people, podcast@sarahnoelwilson.com if you want a copy of Waymakers. Tara, thank you so much for being you, for being the waymaker you are for so many, and helping us learn how we can build better bridges to a better world.
Thank you
You're
so much,
amazing.
Sarah. This has truly been a gift to me. You couldn't have known this, but especially on this day. So I'm
Mm.
just grateful, honestly, for the time we had to spend together, and for your support and your love as well. So thank you, and thanks to everyone listening.
This completes our conversation with Tara Jaye Frank. There is so much that I am chewing on. I don't even know where to begin. I think that one of the things that's been so provocative for me is that idea of thinking about what does protection look like, and how in every single moment, especially for those of us who have power and authority, we can make a difference and make a way for someone else. And a reminder that we will be giving away 20 copies of her book, The Waymakers. Just send us an email at podcast@sarahnoelwilson.com with your name and address. We'll make that happen. So the first 20 people who send us an email at podcast@sarahnoelwilson.com asking for The Waymakers book will get one sent to your home. And if you'd like to find out more about the work we do and how we can help your team have conversations that matter, check us out at sarahnoelwilson.com. You can also pick up a copy of my book, Don't Feed the Elephants, wherever books are sold. And if you like this show, if you've been following us for a while, if you're a new listener, please consider becoming a patron. You can visit patreon.com/conversations on conversations, where not only your financial support will sustain this podcast and the incredible team that makes it happen, but you'll get access to some pretty great benefits as well. And if you haven't yet, I am asking a favor that you please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can do this on iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast platforms. This helps us get the word out. It helps us increase our visibility and continue to bring on amazing guests each week. A huge thank you to our incredible team who makes this podcast possible, to Nick Wilson, our producer, our sound editor, Drew Knoll, transcriptionist Olivia Reinert, and marketing consultant, Caitlin Summit Nelson. And a big old thank you to Tara Jaye Frank. I have been looking forward to this conversation for some time, and I am leaving deeply changed because of her book and because of this opportunity to be with her. This has been Conversations on Conversations. Thank you for listening. And remember, when we can change the conversations we have with ourselves and others, we can change the world. So don't forget to rest, rehydrate, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, everyone.